Hi everyone. Today I'm going to run through a brief tutorial of Azure DevOps. DevOps is a project management tool that will help you and your team organize sprints, user stories, product backlog, and your Kanban board. So to get started, let's go to dev.azure.com. And when we get there, we're going to select Sign into Azure DevOps. And from there, we're going to sign into our Microsoft account. And this is going to bring us to the DevOps landing page. So I already have a project set up, but for this tutorial, I'm going to create a new project, and you can do that by selecting the new project button in the top right. And we're going to have to create a project name. And if you want to add a description, go for it. Next, you will want to select the advanced section, and in the work item process, you will select Agile. Selecting Agile is going to allow you to assign user story points to your user stories. Click Create. And now it brings us to the project. So the main area you're going to be working in is the boards section. The boards contains work items, which is where you create user stories, the boards, which is the Kanban board, the backlogs, which is your product backlog, and sprints. So let's click on sprints. And I don't really do much in here, but one important thing to adjust in here is setting the dates to the sprints. So clicking on set dates, you can adjust the name of the sprint if you want, but you also need to do a start and end. So we're going to start the sprint today, and then we're going to do just a traditional 2-week sprint, and we're going to set that to end on the 9th. So we have our name, our start date, and our end date. Save and close. And now we're good to go with the sprint. So we're going to create a few user stories for the project. So we're going to select on work items. And then in the new work items section, we're going to click on user story. So to create a user story, you need to add a title, you need to add a description, and you need to assign story points. So for the title, for a user story, I try to include a perspective. So for this particular user story, we're going to use the client perspective, and we're going to write as the client as well. So we clearly state it's the client, and we're going to write, I want to visualize donor data from the last 6 months. In the description, I try to include 3 key elements as well. Reiterate the perspective, state what is being asked, and then state what the benefit is. So for this user story, we have, as the client, I would like to have the ability to visualize donor data throughout the last 6 months. This will help my team to gain a better understanding of the current donor landscape and better inform the board of directors. So for the story points, my team and I, we decided to use a story point ranging from 3 to 13. We thought story points of 1 and 2 were a bit too small to be considered a useful user story, and we thought anything outside of anything bigger than 13 started getting into epic territory. So we thought user stories ranging from 3, 5, 8, 13 were good. So this user story is not the simplest thing in the world, but it's not the most involved either. So let's just assign 5 user stories to it. And for the risk, we're just going to assign medium. So as is, we're good to go. We can create this user story, but there's one additional area that I would like to point out to you. So in this related work section, you can, if you click add link, you can select existing item, and here you can link parent and child relationships between other user stories. So this is just a tutorial and we're just kind of seeing how a user story gets set up, but maybe in general terms, we would have to link up a user story that was related to the ETL process or just acquiring the data to begin with. So this would require us to complete those user stories before we were able to begin working on this. And as your product backlog grows and grows, it will be helpful to assign those child-parent relationships to better understand what needs to be done first. But we're just starting out. So right now we have the title, the description, user story point. So we are good to go. Click save. And let's head back to the work items and make one more user story. So we're going to click on new work item, user story. And for our next user story, we are going to use the perspective of Dr. Haluk. So we're going to use the professor perspective and status update 1. And the description is going to be, as the professor, I want one slide submitted to Canvas that captures the hours spent on the project, current risks, and tasks completed. This will help the team track their progress. So the user story point, this is pretty basic. So let's just assign 3 to it. And let's keep the risk at medium and click save. So we now have 2 user stories created for our project, and we're going to go to the backlog section. So this is where your product backlog is. And right now we only have 2 user stories, but for any other project, this would contain, probably hundreds of user stories. It's just a nice area to really, see what you're working with and just get a better grasp of the user stories that are in your project. So moving over to the board section, this is the Kanban board area of DevOps. And as a default, it has 4 columns. My team and I, we thought that was a bit much for what we were doing. So early on, we decided to remove one of the columns. So here we are removing the resolved column, and we're just left with new, active, and closed. You and your team can do whatever best works for you guys. For us, we decided 3 columns is the easiest for us. So the new column contains all your user stories in your product backlog. So right off the bat, this is just going to have tons and tons of user stories. The active column, for my team and I, we decided the active column would be what the current sprint was. So whatever user stories we decided to work on for that sprint would be in the active column. So you just simply click on the user story and move it over. And then to assign the sprint, you click on the user story, and in the iteration, you are going to need to select the sprint. And the current sprint we are on is iteration 1. So we're going to save and close. Same for the next one. We're going to select iteration 1, save and close. And then as your project progresses, you're going to move the user stories over to the closed. And yeah, hopefully as you go on, this column becomes larger and larger, and this becomes smaller and smaller. I hope you learned a few things in this tutorial. DevOps has definitely been useful for my team, and I hope you find it useful for yours. Thank you.